my friend, I want to ask you, have you been listening to some of my podcasts for a while and identified for yourself all the areas that you feel your business could be better in? Maybe you just are so busy you haven't yet mastered the working as much as you like bit. Or maybe you're just not bringing in the money, like you're struggling with the income, or it's just not enough. Well, it's time for us to have a conversation. In the show notes, there is a link to my Evolution call. If you're a dance boss and you are ready to take action, let's have a chat and let's see where I can take you. Hello and welcome, lovelies, to the Ultimate Dance Business Podcast. My name is Deborah Laws, the dance business expert. My passion is to help you turn your passion into profit while guiding you to work less and earn more. I'm super excited to share interviews with you that I know will inspire and motivate you in your schools, as well as my solo shows where I shall be sharing some great tips and strategies. So if you love the show, please do remember to review, subscribe, and share it with your fellow dance boss friends. So let's get stuck into the business of dance. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today on what is going to be the most marvelous podcast interview with the wonderful Rosina Andrews. Rosina, hello.
Hi, Deborah. How are you? Nice to see you.
Very good, thank you. And we were just talking before we started recording on the fact that it's been such a long time since we last connected, and so much has happened in that period of time, especially for yourself as well. So for those people that haven't met Rosina, and I'm sure a lot of you do, especially all my UK listeners, Rosina, could you just start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you are, and then we'll go on to the topic for this week's podcast.
So I'm Rosina Andrews. I am a dance educator, and I'm known quite well for my books on Pirouette Surgery and Leap Surgery, as well as my Dance Smarter approach to dance teaching. My current kind of focus as I would say entrepreneur / influencer, not biggest fan of the influencer word, but in the dance world, I think I am a bit of an influencer, is really collaborating dance teachers together to create a good community of dance teachers that are getting the results that they want, kind of similar in a way to you, Deborah, results that they want in a class situation, as opposed to more so for their business. And then really rising and elevating both themselves and their students to have that like dance family that they're all looking for. So that's my current goal. It has been my goal for quite a period of time now. Actually, I've not seen Deborah since we did a teachers intensive down in Devon, didn't we? And those little girls who came to demonstrate are now like auditioning for Matthew Bourne. So that makes me feel really old. But yeah, it was that was like one of the first teachers intensives that we do, and it's just really nice to work with dance teachers because I've grown up, my mum's a dance teacher, I've grown up in a dance school, so it's kind of that whole concept of I just always want to not change, but have kids have a different growing up dance experience to perhaps what we did, and changing trends, and stopping generational trauma is a bit of an extreme way of saying it, but that kind of vibe, like dance has changed so much. So that's me, that's what I do, that's my aim.
Amazing. Thank you. And I'm sure there are an awful lot of dance teachers out there right now listening that are really grateful for everything that you have done, everything you currently do, everything that you will do. Because, watching on from afar, it's so lovely to watch your journey because, you really are an entrepreneur. And that word is not one that many people associate with the dance world and dance teaching.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
It's a passion, it's an art, but the word entrepreneur doesn't often go along with that. And that's 100% what I've always seen you as since I became aware of you. And I think, that in itself is inspirational for people in our industry to know, do you know what? We can make more of this other than just a passion or something that we love doing.
I agree. It's that whole comment of, oh, you're just a dance teacher. And I'm like, that has to change. Like, we're not just dance teachers. There's so much more to it. And I know those people starting out do feel like they really are just currently teaching dance, but there's so much. And I think it's funny because when I was at school, you do these career meetings, and I was adamant I was going to be a professional dancer. I remember being like this. I can't imagine me as 15. I wouldn't not necessarily want to teach me, but I was so adamant I was going to be this dancer. And the teacher was like, "Why don't you take this card and describe this?" And it was the word entrepreneur, and I was so adamantly against it. But I look back at it now, and I'm like, "Oh my god, the teacher saw something in me at 15 that he knew, whilst I was going to be a dancer and perform and all that there was going to be more to it." But I just remember being so adamant. I'm a dance teacher, I was an entrepreneur. And then now look where it's gone. But yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur, not a dance teacher.
Oh no, and actually I'd rather, like, especially when I speak to muggle people who don't know what our industry is, if you say you're a dance teacher, they just picture, I don't know, baby ballet in a church hall probably, which is definitely my era at the moment. I'm very much into baby ballet with Zura. But if you say entrepreneur and a business owner, they're like, "Oh, that's cool. What is it?" And then you kind of redirect and reframe what it is dance teaching is, which I think is really important because it's not just dance teaching.
No, absolutely. And of course, the majority of people that listen to my podcast are dance studio owners, dance owners, dance business owners, and
dance bosses. I saw that on your branding. Yes.
And of course, that's more than being just a teacher. You know, there's you have automatically stepped into a role, whether you want to own that role, whether you like the role or not, but unfortunately you are. And so it's just kind of really owning it, stepping into it, and then kind of looking at all the parameters of what do I need to learn now to be really great at this, as opposed to just being great at my teaching. So I mean, I'm really interested, Rosina, to know, obviously you trained as a dancer, you mentioned that you grew up in a dance school, and then went on to teach. But how did you transition from being and let's quote it, just the dance teacher to writing books and running seminars and being a guest speaker? And like, how did that happen?
How did that happen? No, so I went to dance college quite young. I went to dance college at 16, graduated, moved to London, and got into a dance company that was mainly people from all different countries. And it was my first experience of dancing and working with people that had trained in another country. Like, I don't think it's something that we necessarily do as young dancers, more so now with social media and YouTube and things like that. But when I was 16, that wasn't a thing. So moved to London, got into this dance company, was performing with them. And the director of it was like, "Rosina, you really need to like expose yourself to more and be like expose yourself to different cultures and countries and this." And I'd never thought of taking the gap year because obviously as a dancer, you are advised not to, you know, you go to college, you work hard, you train, there is no time for that 3 years in Thailand, etc. So I saved up, and I remember every penny that I made from every performing job, like all of Panto and things like that, I put into a bank, and I said, right, I'm going to move to New York, which I knew was somewhere deep in my heart that I absolutely loved. I'd been a few times. And at that moment, I was like, she was like, "Oh, that's a great idea. You'll experience so many new things when you get to New York, blah, 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 blah." So me and my husband now, he wasn't my husband back then, but we moved to New York, and we spent 8 months working at Broadway Dance Center and training there. And at that moment, not only did my way I danced changed, but the way I looked at everything changed. And I don't know, there's something about Americans that are just, you know, you expect them to be really bolshy and really loud. And yes, they are, but they also have this like zest for learning and life and things like that. Maybe not all of them, but the ones I've come across, maybe in those in the dance industry or theatre industry, they're very much bigger, larger than life. And it was that moment that I was like, my goodness, there's so much more than what I have ever experienced. Like, these teachers are teaching with anatomy from their like 6-7-year-olds. I'm like, we don't even think to say oblique to a 5-year-old. Like, why would you? But they're doing that. And then I'm also looking at how they've got life coaches, and they've got business coaches, and they've got law degrees alongside their dance things. And I was like, my God, there's so much more. And it was for me the moment that I was like, okay, I don't just want to be a professional dancer. I want to educate like these people, these masters. And I was very, very young when I went. And when I came back, I think I got thrown into a few like cover teaching roles that I was like, okay, this is bigger than what I think I'm actually capable of right now. But I had to step up to the plate. And because of that, I really began to like hone how I taught and what made me different to other people. How the books came along, I am very stubborn. Someone said to me, "Oh, Rosina, you've been in America. Those kids do pirouettes really well, don't they?" And I'm like, my God, don't they? So I was like, right, let me teach your 7-year-olds. And it was very out of the blue to be teaching 7-year-olds pirouettes back in 2000. 2007, 2008, 2009. But there I am giving it let's make a 6-year-old do a double pirouette. And ironically, they could do it. And it was sort of parallel with the growth of social media, as well as sort of people being like, no one is doing this yet. No one has found a super micro niche. So I started doing that. And then someone said to me, Rosina, you should write a book about this. And I'm that kind of person that's like, right, bring it on. I had no clue where to write a book. 2011, I had no idea where to sort of start. I left school at 16. I did my GCSEs, but I didn't definitely have an A level in like English literature or English language or anything like that. But I was like, right, bring it on. And it's been a journey from then. But I think it's always been installed in me that there's more to what I do. And I think I'm that person that has ants in their pants and can't sit still and is always planning and building new things. I think it's just expanded from there, really. It's just blown
and that's
up.
where the word entrepreneur comes from, isn't it? It is that, that curiosity. What more can I create for myself? What more can I learn?
Also that, what more can I create? What more can I learn? And also, where is the gap? What can I change? And the gap originally was that we didn't turn in the UK. Pirouettes was not a thing, but that gap has changed now. I think for me, I think naturally it's moved into like supporting dance teachers to get all of their virtuoso movements up to a level. And I think that kind of leads on to what we're going to talk about today. I think that's why we're so desperate to get these things bigger.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the natural, organic way that this has all developed for you, because you started obviously with the pirouettes and turns, then it went on to the leaps. It's almost as if you pocketed that niche, then you pocketed that niche, then you pocketed that niche, and then you're like, right, now I need to give more overall support.
Yes, that is what I felt like it definitely became. And I'm very much for the whole micro niche. I'm very much for, we're always told as dancers, be versatile. And I'm like, yeah, you can be. But I like the word flexible, and not necessarily flexible as in like legs, but flexible upon situations. But I don't think you need to be the master of everything to be successful at one thing. So super, super niche. And then, it definitely has expanded, which has been, it's been fun. And I definitely am organic. And I think that is one of the things I like to stick with. Sometimes outspoken, but hey ho, like I'm a Leo. That was going to come out, wasn't it? Like, you ever met my dad, that I was going to be outspoken. So
and, I'm just interested a little bit in your take, because you have experienced it from both sides of the pond. I'm very aware, when I had my first business coach who was in the dance and performing arts industry, there was no one in the UK. We're going back about 8-9 years now. So I had to find my coach is in Australia, but she also coached in America. And I became very aware very soon that all my Aussie and American friends that I was running, on this course with, were so much further ahead than I was. And I've been running my school 20 plus years. Their business acumen and the way that they ran their schools was so different to the UK. And the reason I had to find an Australian coach was because there wasn't anyone in the UK.
Sure.
I mean, that in itself stood for itself. I was the only one in Europe. I think there's maybe a lady in Paris, and that was it. So why is it, do you think, that the Australians and the Aussies really do treat their dance schools as a business? Do they have that business head and that business mindset? And why don't we have that? I mean, I know it's changing.
I don't know. Well, no, I do have some ideas, but that is very obvious. And I think for me, that is also completely parallel to how 8-9 years ago we were teaching leaps, turns, technique, how those kids are doing X, Y, and Z, but we're nowhere near that. Interestingly, my best friend is Australian, and she owns a dance studio on the Gold Coast. And I've watched her, she took over a dance studio that she bought from someone about 10 years ago. And I've watched her change how she was running that in a very similar sort of, why are they doing that and not me? And in a way, I look at it and I think, I could, luckily with Coastal Dance, I'll drop the name, she's awesome. I can sort of copy what she's doing for my mum's dance studio, because I do sort of still micromanage that, without anyone telling me that I won't piss anyone off, because it's so far away, no one is going to care. And she knows it, and we swap ideas and there's things like that. But I also do agree that the Australians really have got this down. And the only thing I can think of is the way that they approach life and school is slightly different to how we approach school here. I think the education that we do is a little bit antiquated, as opposed to them being quite open for dancers going full-time at 18 in dance, having different length school days, different subjects, business, IT, things like that. And whilst we do have business and IT in the UK, working with like 16, 17-year-olds at the moment, I realized that they're very much still into that like industrial headspace as opposed to the international and online business headspace. And I think the future is online. I think the future is, there's no boundaries any longer, is there? Like, we can talk to American dance teachers. In fact, like, I'll be speaking to one yesterday and we're online, whereas that wasn't a thing. And I do think the UK education system doesn't allow kids to feel that they could expand as quick as they could. So I think this is changing, because I'm noticing more and more kids doing homeschool, because obviously in America and Australia, homeschool is massive. Like, homeschool is the thing. Like, all the top level dancers in America, they all homeschool. Whereas here, they're beginning to get like that, but it's still got that kind of aura about it that's, yeah, it's a very, very different environment. And I think that's why they improve like they do.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting, actually. And, you know, from my experience with the Australians, Canadians and Aussies, there's a, like you said, you slipped in, there's like a different lifestyle as well. And I feel like their outlook is very, you want to do that? Go for it.
Yeah. Like, for sure.
Yeah. Like, make it happen. Whereas in this country, we're like, oh, you need your A-levels, or you need your education to fall back on, or what if that doesn't work? Like, I feel like there's a whole cultural difference that actually affects the arts.
And it's weird, isn't it? Because like US, Australia, UK, if you're looking at any other element of the world, we're quite aligned. There's no reason that it, like, you know, our banking isn't 100 years behind, but our dance teaching apparently is, which feels really strange. And I think it is also the amount of people. Australia is slightly different, but the US, there is such a pool of millions and millions of people that you can pull from anything. And I don't think I ever realized how big the US was until I went and I saw, oh my goodness, like, these dance studios have 600 dancers. And that is the norm. Like, we don't do that here. Like, I mean, some places maybe, but there's just not enough kids to go around. Whereas like in America, that's like, oh yeah, we've got a small studio of 550. You're like, oh, okay. with six studios. Yeah, cool.
I know. Yeah. And we've got a lovely new coach in Dance Business Lab who's Canadian. And we did a poll on one of our last coaching sessions because this conversation came up about owning your own studios. Yeah. And she said, and it was, you know, a bit of a guesstimate, but she said approximately 75% in Canada have their own premises. We did a poll in my group, and I think it was about 45%. Like, that's a huge difference.
I was going to say, if I think of the workshops I've done, you know, 60, 70% of them are in the church hall, which isn't a problem. Like, the studio is great, but it is church hall versus the complex, which I think then it attracts a different like clientele, I think, slightly if you do have your own building. And I'm not saying that's the be all and end all, but like, if I drive past somewhere that says, oh, a dance studio, I think, oh, that's actually like substantial. Whereas if I see the flyer on the like coffee shop wall, I feel, oh, okay, maybe that's a different kind of energy. So I think, you know, if you have got your own buildings and they are on every corner in the US, then yeah, that could be why. However, I'm not saying that you do, just a little waiver there, I'm not saying you do need your own building. I mean, we do, so that's amazing. But I've seen some amazing schools that have come out of community centres, so no judgment there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we could talk this topic all day, but
yeah, we could, absolutely.
Said that we were going to talk about, which I think our listeners are going to really enjoy, because I haven't actually touched on this subject before, is comps, dealing with the dance mums and also the pressure that our kids are under nowadays. So tell me a little bit about your experience with comps. Presumably you have students that you enter, you're quite heavily involved in compsing.
Yeah, so my experience with comps, I think, is quite an all-round one. I work with a very elite team specifically, and they do a lot of competitions. They do a lot of international competitions. I work with a lot of dancers one-on-one on Zoom and in person across all different genres, and they do all different styles of festivals. I also judge competitions, and back in the day, I was a competitor, even though they're very different now. But back in the day, I was that kid standing there with their number ready to be like judged, which sounds quite experienced, I guess, and all the different sides of it. I think one thing for me now is just experiencing the change of competitions that's happening. Again, we're trying to align ourselves with maybe the US and Australia, and I think that's a really interesting one for teachers to delve into. It's a love-hate relationship with the big American competitions, which is what they're called, which always makes me chuckle.
Yeah,
it's an American competition. So what is that?
think we are starting to change? What are some of the changes that you're seeing?
So the changes that I'm seeing is sort of the moving away from the I don't like to say old school, but I'm going to say old school dance festival, which takes over a whole week. And you have your modern and your tap and your Greek and your ballet and all those solos, which is what I grew up doing. And then more into these big kind of convention, not the right word, because convention is like we lead to kind of dance, move it, those kind of things. That's not what I mean. Kind of massive competitions that I don't want to say everyone's winning, but everyone's winning something. The trophies are really big. The entry fees are 6 times what they are for the festival. There's compares. The judges, which is something we could talk about. The judges are more from the industry as opposed to someone who's trained as an adjudicator, which I think there is positives of, but there's also a lot of negatives due to the fact that they don't know what children are capable of, and they'll sometimes just be blindsided by the big legs, the tricks, and all that. So that's sort of a balance. I think the other thing is that kids are now seeing so much online. Dance teachers are seeing online, competitions are seeing online, and they're trying to copy what they see. And I think that's always a really worrying concept when people start to copy what they see as opposed to doing it organically. But I think that's the changes that I've seen recently in the last 5-6 years, I'd say.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because if our UK-based kids are seeing things that the say, for example, the US kids are doing in their solos and their routines, but they're coming from schools and backgrounds and technique that isn't teaching that, that puts a whole bunch of pressure on the teacher. Why is my child not doing all these tricks? Well, because they don't have that kind of training that we have.
Because they train 8 hours a week and not 40. No, for sure. There is that. And I think that's something that I use as like when my teachers intensives, I'm like, if we don't teach the tricks that these kids are seeing online, they're going to teach themselves anyway. So we need to have some access and some sort of giving them the opportunity to try. Maybe we're never going to get, like, say, Autumn Miller training as much as she does, but giving them the opportunity. And I think some dance teachers are very adamant they will not change that. So that's where you see kids begin to see the grass is greener at other dance schools because they do XYZ comps. And because we're being so stubborn, possibly, or organic to what we want, we're losing kids sort of left, right, and center to these comp schools, which I think are amazing. And I think the comp schools themselves, it's very dog eat dog. It's a very high level. And I personally wouldn't want to run a dance school that was just comp based because, it's epic. But I think that's what I'm seeing. I'm based upon some people's opinions on the dance teacher pages on Facebook. I'm losing a student because they dance school down the road does competitions. What can I do? And I think at that point, that's where we need to sort of balance what we offer to the students so that they can all experience what they think they want to experience. I'm going to say think, because half the time they do one competition, they hate it, and they never want to do it again. So yeah.
So I thought I would just share with you guys today the planners that I have produced for dance school owners, because these are flying out of Amazon like hotcakes. And if you don't have yours yet, then all you have to do is pop to Amazon and type into the search Deborah Laws, and all 3 books will come up. So the Ultimate Dance Business Planner I designed for you so that you had a little bit of a Deborah on your desktop. The planners are full of business training, tips, motivational quotes, things to do at the start of the month, things to do at the end of the month, ways in which you can plan out your marketing and your retention, and they are selling all over the world. So go to Amazon, grab your #1 best-selling Ultimate Dance Business Planner and enjoy mapping out the growth for your studio. Also, I think it's really important for dance business owners to get really clear on what it is they want their school to be. One of the things that I think is so important, and I say this all the time, it's your school, it's your design. You get to make your school be whatever you want it to be.
Absolutely.
And when it's really, truly aligned with you and your values and what it is that you want your kids to experience, I also think we don't need to try and keep up with the school down the road that's doing comps. If comps aren't your thing and you don't love it, don't do it. But don't try and put yourself out there as being one of those schools. Be very clear. We are not a comp school. If you are a comp school, there's a fabulous one down the road, and I'm happy to recommend them. I think the training is excellent and I think you should go there.
Yeah.
I think the problem comes when we're all grasping for every single student that's out there that makes an inquiry. Yes, come into my school, come into my school. And what they're looking for is not what you do, it's what you're about. Yeah. So I think it's really important that if you want to be a reputable, high standard comp school, that's the messaging that you put out to the world.
Absolutely.
But if you don't want to be those things, don't put that messaging out there.
And I think this is something that dance teachers, I've experienced, that dance mums that come with the kid that want to compete seem to sort of filtrate into the slightly more personal, less professional aura of the dance teacher. And then the dance teacher's like, well, I do comps, but there's only 2 of them that do it because their mums really want them to do it. But, I don't really want to do it. And I'm like, okay, well, those 2 kids realistically aren't your client. They aren't your demographic. Send them somewhere else. I feel like with comps, though, one thing that it's not going to work for everyone, but my mum's dance school, and that's my biggest experience of me actually artistically directing a studio. The rest of it is very much freelance, and I do work a lot of places, but that's my one place that I'd say I have the most experience from. We have the elite comp team, but we also do have the recreational side, which is amazing that we have the ability to do that. We have a big faculty, so there can be the street dance and things like that that's happening without the comp side. However, one thing we've taken, and this probably isn't going to be applicable to everyone, some people maybe, is we don't take dancers into our elite classes over the age of 12. Because the reason they're coming to us over the age of 12 is because they've seen that the competition teams won this, the competition teams won that, we've got this choreographer, that choreographer. And we did do it, and we used to have kids join us from the local dance studios where the grass was greener for the dance mum that wanted kid A to win whatever overall. And it just really ruined the cohesiveness of the senior school that we had. It was getting bitchy, it was getting savage, it was not the energy that we built. So we were like, right, stop. If they want to come to us over the age of 12, they have got to audition, we have got to experience, and we've got to see if they fit in with the competition team, which obviously limits our reach as a studio. But since then, the juniors that are joining the competition team are learning from learned behavior of the way we want the team to run, which is exactly what we're aligning as our studio. So I'd say if you do have a comp school and you are beginning to notice this sort of energy that people are coming because the grass is greener, try that. I mean, maybe you would take everyone because you'll audition them and they'll say that, yeah, they're amazing. But it is something that I really felt has worked, because then the little ones and the little ones' mums have an energy to copy at a competition and a behavior to copy, which I think is so important. So important.
Yeah, I love that. And that kind of leads on to the, how do you deal with the whole dance mums things? To me, it's about a culture that you breed. Yes. And when you start having problems with parents, it's because they're not aligned to the culture, or you haven't created that culture. Yeah. What's your take on that, Rosina?
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I also think, it's very much a community effort and a learned behavior. And I do see there are dance schools, unfortunately, around the country that don't have very great reputations because their teachers at competitions appear to be stricter or shouting or this or that. And then people take that. They don't really realize the kind of the rest of the situation. So they judge that. And then people go, oh, well, that school's really bitchy, or this school's really this. I think that's something that happens a lot. My other take is I'm all about open communication, I don't say lots of contracts, but if you're joining my comp team, you're having a contract, you're knowing the rules, you have a meeting every year. We will tell you that you turn up 90 minutes before you compete. You do stay and clap, and everyone else, you do stay to the end of awards. You do shake the hand of the winner if it's not you, and you go up to the studios and things like that. We very much explain the why and the how. And I think once you get your parents or any client or any customer on your side of why you do it and how you do it, they then trust what you do. I think sometimes it's so blurred. And I think at that point, I also think competitions bring out this weird animalistic maternal instinct in parents. I've seen it. They're not even my kids, but I'm like, oh my God, she deserved that. And I'm like, she's not even related to me. So I can't imagine how the mum would feel if that child, their offspring, is being kind of annihilated on a stage. I know it sounds really brutal, but that's the kind of situation. I do wonder if you eradicate the emotion from the situation, that actually it's a much nicer environment. Something else we've added, and actually I just wanted to drop this in here about parents and how they react to their kids winning or losing, is something called the 24-hour rule. As a teacher, we don't let them email or text or whatever they do their opinion upon the placing until 24 hours later, which has been so much better in the sense that the mum doesn't go, well, she didn't win because her tutu was pink and everyone else's was red. And actually she didn't win because she's realized now that the other dancers were more advanced. But 24 hours just lets the parent calm down, lets the child stop crying, lets all that drama eradicate. And I think that's something that we've added that to our team years and years ago. And it's been life-changing in the whole objectiveness of the situation, which is rare.
My gosh, I love that. That's a little golden.
I'm not going to take responsibility for that. I didn't make that up. I read that in some business dance. No, it would have been like a coaching book for like sports people, I'm sure. It might be Coach John Wooden, actually. Lifetime of Observations on and off the pitch. My favorite like competitive book, but I'm not going to take responsibility for that. But that is amazing. 24-hour rule was life-changing.
But thank you for sharing it, because
my pleasure.
I always coach my clients, if you get some not particularly nice email from a parent or a text, or don't respond for 20 hours, because the emotional response is very different from the professional response. So I love the fact that you're coaching your parents that they can't respond or message you or comment in a WhatsApp group or they can't do anything for 24 because a lot has died down and a lot of process has gone through that person's head. Fabulous tip there.
Actually, our kids were at a competition on Saturday and I didn't know how they'd done until the next morning, which was wonderful. I saw these pictures. There was pictures coming through on the group WhatsApp, like kids with trophies. But that realistically, these big competitions means nothing sometimes, because you're like, what have you won? Oh, you've won best under 7 and there's only one of you. Congratulations. But like that was coming through, but I had no idea how well they'd done, which was really nice just to see them having a lovely time and enjoying it. Yeah,
amazing. Totally love that. And the other thing that you mentioned, which is something I often also discuss with people when they're having problems, is the contract. Yes. Like, I think it's so important that your expectations of them, like, it's not always about what the customer thinks they're going to get from you. Like they've got to fit in, like you said, to your team and your values for a happy, harmonious environment for everyone. So setting down, this is what we're going to do for you. Like our student promise for you and your child. And this is what you promise to do for us, and signing. So just as a kind of someone that's never had this in place or doesn't really know what to do, what kinds of things, I think you've mentioned a few just now, but what kinds of things would you suggest?
Things are in the contract. So things in the contract, I would say you've got attendance needs to be high. If they're part of a group dance, they are committed to the team. If they then are unavailable or they pull out, then obviously not injury, that's something else. But if they, suddenly they've booked a holiday and it's when the group dance is, they then have to pay for the entries of the other dancers, because there's this concept of, oh, it's okay, we'll regroup it 10 minutes before we go on stage. And it's just a very stressful environment, and it's not the kind of environment that a teacher or a dancer wants. So that they then realize that if they're committed to a group, they are committed to the group. That's something I think that's really important. When they need to arrive at a competition, who they need to contact, I think that's always a really good one, because they never seem to know exactly which faculty member they need to contact. So, pre-competition, we'll send them their designated chaperones for that. These are their numbers. This is what they'll be doing. A very clear, a call sheet kind of vibe. I always say we call them a show pack, because that's what we get. I've always had show packs, but I even had them at my wedding. I gave them to people being like, you are not allowed to arrive until 11 a.m. because I don't really want to see you until 11 a.m. And please do go straight to the church. Please. Like, that was everyone was laughing at me, but actually it ran very much like clockwork because I had it in place. What else is on that contract? The 24-hour rule, the fact that they need to maybe find shoes and hair pieces themselves. What else? There's a list of behavior etiquette things, like, you will clap, not too much cheering, please do not be the dance school that everyone's like, oh, they're so annoying, using space, things like that. Just a general behavior. A lot of it is common sense, and I'm sure you find this a lot as well. It feels like as a customer, we already think that they know what we're thinking. And I think you just have to be so transparent. And now Zura is doing little after school, she's not at school yet, but after hobbies or whatever you want to call them, I really realized that actually the emails that I get that have all the information very clear, in like bullet points, I'm like, okay, I know what's going on. But I am the parent, unfortunately, that turned up to swimming when it wasn't on because I hadn't read that email. So I like the like clarity, and I think we just need to consistently tell them. And I think something that dance schools don't do, and I'm really, really trying to do this myself, is yes, the 16-year-olds know the rules because they've been here for 10 years. We don't always repeat the same rules to the new kid. And then you're like, oh, why did she turn up so late? And then you think, actually, has she ever had that meeting where we talk about you need to be 90 minutes before? Because then and I think sometimes we don't continue to share our stuff as business. And I think that's something that I'm actually doing as my actual business, which is separate to this, is re-exposing myself to people that I think already know who I am. Like, but maybe they don't know who I am. And there's loads of new dance teachers that haven't a bloody clue who I am. So I'm like, hi, I don't know if you saw my post the other day that was just like, hi, I'm Rosina. I'm the woman you tag every day on Pirouette Surgery. This is me. This is what I look like. Please have a look at my website. Because I just feel like I'm, not exposing myself to new people. And I think that's something we need to consistently do. Communication has to keep rolling rather than just one time.
Yeah. And also, just because they've had that pack, just because they've been to a meeting, just because they've heard it before, you can't assume that they've remembered it and that they're going to continue.
No, exactly. Just keep reminding.
Like your team training that you might do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or every year. I think some certain things we go back and we revisit every single year.
Yeah. I'm always shocked by some of the stuff in team training that they have forgotten.
Absolutely.
That's the useful bit.
The best one of all is, ask your team to recite the values like every year. Yeah. Most of your teachers can't do that. Definitely need to be able to kind of keep the training. Yeah. This is just great. I'm loving all this really wonderful tips and the discussion. What about the kids? Like, how do we try and make comps fun and educational and a growth experience without anything that could be negative or damaging or trauma related? How do we do that?
Yeah, because I feel like there's a lot of negatives of dance competitions, but there are also so many positives. And I think if you have all of the stuff we've talked about in place, then their positive experience is more likely to happen. Obviously, you have no control over the other dance studios or the organizers and things like that. But if we're leading by example or we're leading people like learned behavior, we're hoping that it will filtrate through. The kids themselves, they love the comps. And I think it's funny because I think if you ask their parents, what does your daughter love about the dance competition? They will probably say, oh, the costumes or the amount of dances they get to do or the trophy or whatever. And I think if you ask the kids, and I actually asked this on Friday to a few of my juniors because I was like, right, I need to know what it is because I feel like Deborah might ask this. And one of them was like, I love the hotel stay, right? I was like, okay, cool. We love that you stay in a travel lodge after whichever competition. Amazing. And the other one was like, I love being there with my friends. I always think it's so much fun. I was like, oh, how did you do at the last competition? And they're like, they couldn't even remember where they placed. And I think we say it, we go, oh, it's the taking part that counts, but it actually really is the taking part that counts. And I think the more we sort of use positive mindset, growth mindset within our classes and our studios and our day-to-day life, that then filtrates really nicely into the event at the competition. I think also it's choosing which competition suits your team. I think it goes back to that whole which ones align with what you do. We don't do Dance World Cup, mainly because I know my parents, by the time it gets to June, July, are all on holiday. We have quite an affluent area where the dancers are, which does coincide with, unfortunately, dance competitions. It's quite an expensive hobby. There's no way in a million years they're going to Portugal at that time because that's when they're going to Bali or that's when daddy's taking them X, Y, and Z. So I think it's picking the comps that work for you. The other thing that I recently have added, we had a lot of junior soloists that didn't have enough time to get their dances ready with a faculty member. Like there was, and the first comp was like the third week of September, which very much was the ground running. So we said, right, we've got a load of seniors. You are going to have a little sister each. So Darcy, for example, has a little sister called Rose. It's your responsibility, kind of, to come into the studio. And the mum's going to be there. You're going to help Rose with her solo. They'll pay you half of the private lesson fee, so you feel like you're being valued for what you're doing. You're also learning some teaching skills and business management and all this. You're actually learning what you're doing. In fact, one of them did say to me, I said, oh, what have you done with your money from your private lesson? She went, I've invested it. And I was like, oh my God, you're 15, but you've invested. Wow. Wow. Congratulations. I was like, you are going to be, I'm looking forward to coming to your mansion when you're 20. So that whole concept of having a big sister meant that they have someone else other than a faculty member at a competition to look forward to. So they go in and Darcy can help Rose with her hair, or Darcy's mum can help Rose's mum with whatever it is that she needs to do without having to bother a faculty member. So having that kind of community within the competition team really helps the energy of the event. I think there's not anyone like against each other, which is really, really nice.
That's so beautiful. And I really love that idea. And I talk sometimes about having kind of ambassadors or, big ones that link up with mentor little ones. But within the comp team, I can see how that could work so well. And
it just eradicates a lot of the extra drama because, someone else, I'm going to keep using Darcy and Rose as an example. Darcy's been in the competition team for 10 years. She's had a ballet solo. She knows how a ballet shoe ribbons need to be tied. She can sort Rose out. Well, obviously, we're there. We're not just saying, well, you need to get that kid ready for a competition because that's not really fair. But it just it's a delegation, and it's delegating to seniors who sometimes by the time it gets to their comp era, if they're not winners and they're 17, 18, they don't really want to be there that much because they've closed the door on that. They're going to go do criminology or whatever at uni, and they're just being there because that's what they love and that's what they know. So it gave them a responsibility. It gave them something to do, which was really nice. Yeah,
absolutely. And my clients hear me say all the time, they come for the class, but they stay for the community.
Oh, absolutely. For sure. Like I have 2 dancers that have practically quit every style of dance and they just want to graduate the studio when they're 18. They're in one group dance. They turn up to do that. They have a lovely time and then they go home. I never see them other than that. And they're just adamant that they want to finish and they don't want to let the team down, which I think is so important.
Yeah. And, I mean, I knew what you were going to say before you said it, actually, when you asked my kids what they love most about comps. And I was going to say, coach trip.
No, everything. I mean, that's what I remember. Like all the things you don't think is what they were. I mean, obviously the ones that then want to go on to colleges, the scholarships that are available at some of these high level comps are absolutely amazing and they get noticed. But like for the 10-year-old, that is not what they're doing. They're not there for the Erdang scholarship, not at 10.
Yeah, absolutely.
However much we think they are, they're not.
Well, I tell you what, I wish I was young again because I'd want to be on your comp team. That sounds so amazing.
Double pirouette is required, Deborah.
Oh my gosh, I need to get learning those at 4. Could you give me a couple of things, Rosina, that you would love to change about the comp scene in the UK?
Yeah. So, firstly, I think I'd like to change the hype of it, in the sense that the hype of hiring a famous judge who's famous because they were in the Wicked movie but have never worked with a child in their life before. I would like to eradicate. I'd like to change that, in the sense that I always think if you've gone to a competition and you don't have all the big tricks, which you don't necessarily need, sometimes those judges only notice them. And I think that's really hard, especially if you're training some classical technique. Like whilst I do have a big elite competition team, they do have contemporary dancers that follow Cunningham, Horton styles, which are never appreciated with the famous judge. And I do think there's a way of bringing in the industry. And I think those competitions that have more than one judge, that's such a great example, because then you can see what everyone likes. And that's something that I would change. I would like to see less children wearing briefs grinding towards the audience than I do. As a judge, I'm always like, oh, MG, like that child is so little and they're wearing like basically bikini bottoms dancing to. The worst one I've ever seen is Shaggy, It Wasn't Me. Yeah, we're there. And that kid was about 9. And then, wow, the judges, we just sat there like, OMG. It's not the kid's fault, it's the teacher. Like, why would you ever do that? That's something I think I'd like to change, the over-sexualizing of kids in competitions. And again, that's something learned behavior. They've seen 2 pieces on Dance Mums and they think that's acceptable or that's allowed. Don't necessarily have a problem with the 2-piece itself, just when you're grinding in it. What else would I change? There's not much else, I think. I think I would change dance. I would like to share with teachers that they're not all bad and they're not all good. I think when I come to my teachers intensives, I have 50% of them that love comps and will rave about them and 50% that hate comps and rave about them. I'd love to find like a middle ground that actually there is growth for everyone at these events. I think one of the best ways of doing that, if you're not enjoying comps, is troop competitions. There's always a great energy at troop competitions. It's just groups. Obviously, you have to have enough groups to warrant going, but I think that's always a good way of finding that middle ground.
Finding the balance. Yeah, that sounds great. I feel like we could just go on and talk all day about a million gazillion things within the
do it
dance.
again. There we go.
Yeah. Have had it once a month, Rosina.
I do think we're very much aligned with what we like. Even though I'm teaching it in a physical form in class, I think what you do with the business side is very aligned, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rosina, what is coming up next for you? What next project? Because you're an entrepreneur. We've already discussed this. There are things in the pipeline. I don't know whether you can share them, but is there anything that you've got coming up next?
Anything that's coming up next? Is there anything? But there is a few little things coming up. I've got my teaching intensive in summer, which we're slightly altering this year, adding a few different styles to the situation, some exposure to like hip hop and street dance and things like that, which is really cool. I've not got any specific projects, but my goal and what's next for me is to reboot what I am doing and blast it everywhere, if you know what I mean. Because I feel like, especially having the baby, I definitely got everything working with some systems and functions, but then did the bare minimum whilst with the baby. She's now able to tell me, mama, TV, or whatever. So I can actually spend a little bit more time in the evenings once she's asleep, getting a little bit more of that going. So I'd say that's what's coming. I can't put my foot on anything specific. There are no more books. Everyone asks me if there's more books. There are no more books. I can't write 60,000 words again. I don't think, just in case. I think there's some few things like my downloadable PDFs and things like that. They're really, really well received. And I think that's a really good way of just adding on knowledge every now and then. So there's probably a few more of those, but yeah.
Amazing. And where can people find you if they would love one of your downloadable books, or if they would love to follow you?
You can find me at www.rosinaandrews.co.uk, and then you can find me on Instagram, which is at Rosini Ballerini, which is a nickname I had at college and it has stuck. And yeah, probably you're my business coach. You could say, Deborah, was that a good handle? Probably not, but we're going with it, and it seems to be working. So yeah, Rosini Ballerini is where it's happening. Yeah.
Amazing. And I love to finish my podcast episodes with a few quick fire questions on the end.
Goodness, yes, okay.
Some of them are silly. Some of them are quite hard, actually. Some people say, oh, that's not a quick question. But if you're shall we go?
First thing that comes to mind. Okay, let's go.
Brilliant. Favorite business book?
Key Person of Influence, Daniel Priestley. I've read it so many times.
Wonderful. Favorite country to holiday?
Ibiza.
What's on one thing that you're going to do from your bucket list this year?
Oh my goodness, that's a long one. What am I going to do on my bucket list? Learn to play the piano. Yeah, it's one of my New Year's resolutions. Is like, and I promised my mum's students that I'd play at their Christmas cabaret. I mean, it might be Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but I do practice nearly every day, not for very long, but I do practice. Yeah, so play the piano.
Love that one. If you could spend 15 minutes with somebody from history that's no longer with us, who would you sit down with?
Steve Jobs.
Oh, and if you could spend 15 minutes with somebody that is still with us, who would you sit down with? I know, I'm sorry. I said that some of them were quite hard.
That's really tricky. You know what? I think it sounds so tacky, and she's going to love it that I said this, but my mum, because we do not chat enough about, like, if it was about where we take the business, or where I take my business, or what I should do, we never talk about that. We talk about little Jenny's costume and Zura's what she ate for dinner. So yeah, that would be what I'd do.
Amazing. Well, I feel like you can get that one in the diary, along with the learning piano and going on holiday to Ibiza.
I am actually. Well, I'm learning piano. We are going to Ibiza in Easter, and I probably meet my mum for a coffee more so than I do.
Rosina, it's been such an utter pleasure. I'm sure everyone's got so much from this episode. It's been a joy hanging out with you.
Thank you so much.
No, you're a busy lady, but thank you so much. And hopefully we can get you back on again sometime in the future.
Oh, I'd absolutely love that, because I think we could chat for days. I think we could, Deborah. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Rosina. So I wonder wanted to tell you that this episode is kindly sponsored by Sally at Dance Studio Marketing, who is your go-to solution for growing your dance school through the power of social media. So if you're feeling overwhelmed at trying to attract new students, at Dance Studio Marketing, Sally helps dance studio owners just like you to leverage the power of social media and paid ads to bring in a steady stream of students, which of course helps you to achieve more balance in your life. So if you're ready to grow with less stress, visit sallyprendergast.com, or you can connect with Sally at Dance Studio Marketing on your favorite social media platform today. My clients are getting fabulous results using Sally. So let's get those ads going and let's get your school growing.